7:07. It's time for 7 minutes of sunshine. And as you can see, I have a wonderful guest this morning, Lourdes Barroso de Padilla. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so glad that you got up early to join me this morning. I know it's not. I know it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, gosh, I looked. Did a little research on you, Lourdes, and I met you probably a decade ago at the United Way. We were on the Diversity Inclusion Committee together.
Wow, good memory.
Yeah, and that's where I first met you. And of course, you're so involved with so many things. I've seen you, just with doing so many things in the community. So then I looked up your LinkedIn profile, and I'm like, oh wow, are you busy? But just a couple things to share before you share your values and superpower. Just that you've been with City Year for almost 15 years.
25.
Oh, 25. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 25 years with the city. Okay. And you founded 5 of City Year sites across the country. So you've dedicated 25 years to City Year, which is amazing. You can share a little bit more about City Year probably when you go through your values and your superpower. But some of the other things that you're involved in is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, New Politics, National Service Council member, New Leaders Council Columbus Chapter Advisory Board member, YWCA Columbus Board member, Latina Mentoring Academy Director. My gosh, United Way of Central Ohio you've been involved with, Directions for Youth and Families, Create Columbus Commission, Leadership Columbus. It's amazing. So you have really dedicated yourself to the community, obviously. So thank you for that. Thank you for all that service. And you're running for city council.
I am.
You're going to squeeze a little time in for that too, huh?
Well, a little bit.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me. And so I thought maybe you could start by just sharing why you're running for city council. I'd love to hear that. And then your values and your superpower, and then we'll chat on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you.
Sure. And thank you for having me this morning, Tom. So excited to be here and to share my story with all of you. Can you see me okay? So I think, well, first and foremost, the reason I want to run for city council, it's interesting. I think simply I love this city. I'm a daughter of this city. I'm first generation American. My parents are political refugees from Cuba. And I was born 6 years after they came to America. And, my father, 2 of my uncles were political prisoners in Cuba, each of them spending a decade in jail apiece. My father was in a work camp before he came to America. And so this idea of democracy and justice was something that was imprinted in my DNA. And I think, and this is probably true for any first generation kid, when your parents are immigrants, the trauma and the joy of being an immigrant, being new to this country, it is imprinted in your DNA. And I think it helps to shape the way you see the world, your values, how you show up, the things you want to give back. And I think, this exercise of thinking about my values, I think brought me back to, they're all interconnected. It's interesting that they're in this circle because I think they kind of grow one from the other, right? And there, one comes, this value, you're centered in it, but then this other, it's like a little shoot that comes out of this other kind of value that's over here. And so for me, I think first and foremost, I started with love because my family, we did not have a lot growing up, but the one thing that we always had, and my parents made sure of every day, was that we felt loved. We grew up here. It was just my parents, my sisters, and I. Our closest family was in Miami or in Texas. So this idea of being centered in this family and having this community around us that really loved us, that really raised us, and that we were interdependent on each other, right? Because the idea of family moved beyond DNA and moved to really the people who showed up and loved you. And, my parents came here literally with nothing. It was by the grace of people who helped them, connect them to resources and connect them to, um, building a sense of belonging and community. And my parents, you talk about all the things that I did. My parents were the same way. I learned it from them. They started an organization with their friends that was like partially like a social club, but they also did. They created a sense of belonging. They had like uh, Spanish and English classes and dance classes, and we did these big bailes, these big bands from Chicago and Cleveland would come down, and it was a time to really celebrate your culture together with other people who look like you, who spoke the language that you spoke, in a place where there wasn't a lot of us at the time. I mean, my parents came here in the 70s. They were like pioneers here in Ohio, little Latino pioneers. But that idea of love and loving other people and seeing their humanity. Brian Stevenson, who is one of, I deeply admire him. He's like one of our modern day civil rights activists, and he talks about proximity and that we need to be more proximate to each other, right? And it's through that proximity that we understand each other. And, my parents were really the first teachers of that for me. And I think that moves us over into servant leadership. My dad had the first Latino food store here in Columbus, and he would see families come in, and he would let them run a tab. And while everyone would not agree that it is the best business model, for my dad, he literally was one of those people who will give you the shirt off his back. He was so empathetic to others and so understood people's struggles and wanted to help to empower them. And so my parents never did anything that never asked anyone to do anything they wouldn't do themselves. And so this idea of servant leadership, this idea of serving others and giving back to community really started with them. I remember having new immigrant families that would come, and my parents and their friends would come together with like, what resources do these families need? Often at our house at holidays, we had, multiple people coming in. Sometimes we just met them on that holiday. My parents have stood in for other people's families when they were back in their home countries as their parents at their weddings. They have, I don't know how many godchildren. So this idea of servant leadership, this idea of giving back and serving your community, again, really came from the way that me and my sisters were raised, and really my family, and giving back and growing your community. And then the idea of empathy, which I mentioned before, I think I consider myself an empath. I think that is written into the Latino code. I come from a long line of strong women, and I'm raising two strong girls that you see here in the picture. And I think intuitively, I'm that person usually in a room that feels the energy of others. I deeply feel the pain that our community is going through. I feel, a lot of times to understand others, I pull on, even some of the experiences that I've had that may not be the same, but it's interesting when someone dies in Latino culture, or when someone dies in Spanish, we say, lo siento, which means I feel this. Not the same way that you do, but I feel this in my heart, and I carry this with you, right? Like, I am empathetic to the thing that you're going through, which to me always felt like a much more beautiful thing than like condolences or saying I'm sorry, because what is, as someone who's lost big, I can't, sorry is not the right vocabulary word. And it's not always about the hard things that you feel, but you feel those joys with others, and you feel that sense of pride and being in solidarity with people through the things that they're actually feeling, and connecting on that level is definitely a value that I carry deeply. And I think, these ideals were not just things that I learned with my family, but you talked about my career at City Year, and I served as a corps member. So I actually did 2 years of service as a young person. And this idea of giving back and showing up with love and showing up with empathy was the only way that we could get our work done when you're this kid who, you know, I thought I knew everything about lots of things. And then I walked into a community or walked into a school, and very quickly folks let me know how much I didn't know. And so it was truly by seeing others and seeing their humanity that I was able to connect and build relationships and get the work done that we were sent to do. And then lastly is equity. And I think, you know, for me, that's just self-explanatory. I think understanding that we have systems in this country that were not built up to support people. They were set up to hold people down, whatever your difference was, right? Whether you were a woman, whether or whatever your gender is, however you identify, you know, who you love, the color of your skin, your ethnicity. And so this idea of equity means so much to me about how do we build equitable systems, especially working in education for a long time. I see this, our kids have an unfair disadvantage and it's not their fault. It's a system that was set up not to help them succeed. And so this is something that, you know, I'm proud to work at City Year because we're helping to create a more equitable educational experience for the kids that we work with every day. And so lastly, getting to my superpower, which was a hard one to identify, what is your superpower? But I think the idea of empowering others, you know, I graduated from high school by the hair on my chinny chin chin. It was by the grace of some teachers who were like, girl, you need to get out of here and like go out into the world and do some things, and you can't stay here. And I came to City Year, and like literally a year later, I was sitting across this kid who like barely graduated. It wasn't because I wasn't smart. It was just because in high school it's hard, and it's hard to deal with, you know, the struggles of life and like the struggles of high school. And I found myself sitting across from like the CEO of like Levi Strauss, you know, in San Antonio when I was helping to set up our site in San Antonio and helping to design service projects. And I was like, who am I? But it was because someone else saw something in me, right? And so this idea of empowering others is that we can sometimes so very clearly see the gifts that others have to give. And we get in our own way sometimes. And so, you know, being the director of the Latina Mentoring Academy, we don't do anything amazing to the women that come into our program. It's a professional development and mentoring program. What we do is we give them a platform. We just say, here's your gift, right? Here's your gift, share it with the world. And this idea of empowering others, to me, I get invited to these tables, right? And it's not because I didn't work hard, but I know it's because someone's championing me, right? And when I show up, I bring another chair. Like, who am I bringing along? If you let me in that door, I'm holding it ajar. I'm keeping it cracked open so somebody else can walk in. And so this idea of continuing to pull people up and have them walk alongside of you and extending those opportunities to others, that's how we're going to reach all these other things. That's how we're going to reach equity, right? That's how we show love. That's how we show empathy. And that's truly how we empower others.
Wow. Wow. So you almost blew me off my seat as you were sharing. Beautiful values, beautiful superpower. You nailed that superpower, and you obviously that is what you're doing. And it's so great to see you putting that into action, obviously. But a couple comments on the screen while you were sharing. Richard McCarley says, "I love your passion." I agree. And Susan Grody, who happens to be my cousin, is on. She says, "Wow, busy advocate. City Council needs Lourdes. Beautiful name for a beautiful soul." So there you go. Just a couple of the comments. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I just, you know, City Council needs you. City Council needs you. How lucky we would be for you to bring all of that passion, your superpower to empower others, to City Council, and to broaden that platform even more. This is why I do this program, is to lift people up like you, to let folks know that, because, you know, we hear so much about people whose values aren't great and they make a lot of news. And there's so many people like you doing beautiful things for our community. It's important that we let folks know what's going on and inspire them. And so this program is all about inspiring others to get up and do something, right?
Agreed. Well, sometimes it's not even the big things. I think that that's the thing. I think, showing kindness to your neighbors, being intentional about building relationships with others, showing up for people, showing up for the things that you care about, whether it's with your time, your talent, or your treasure. I think it is, it's this idea, I think that again, we hold ourselves back, right? Sometimes it's just the little things, right? And if everyone does a little, then it adds up to a lot. Everybody doesn't have to have a busy schedule. Everybody doesn't have to run for office, but support the candidates that you love. Understand what the issues are. Sign up for things. I mean, during the ballot, to get on the ballot, you need 1,000 signatures. And most people don't know that because you can easily get that when the world is free, right? During this time, I mean, we relied on people. People were literally calling other people. We were driving to people's homes. I mean, that to me, that's true organizing, like at a very grassroots level. And you can tell the power of if you call 5 of your friends and you say, do this thing, they're more apt to do it, right? Because they love you and they want to show up for you and you're showing up for someone else, right? And if we did that every day, can you imagine? It takes this much energy to do.
Well, I'm glad they let you out of high school. Because can you imagine the thousands of people that would not have been inspired by you and lifted up by you if they had it? I mean, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story today. I really
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. I wish you all the luck in the world with city council race. And thank you for just continuing to do the good work that you do. And remember, even when it's really damn cloudy out, Lourdes, the sun is always shining, right?
100%.
All right. Listen, I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks for joining us.